Hello again. We have here is a plane. Although, I mean, you can really hardly call it a plane. It's very rudimentary because we don't have a lot of good technology right now, and we're a little short on science. So really, I'm realizing now I should have probably started this thing sitting on its tail, because I doubt we'll be able to take off like this. Although, our reaction wheels are weak. So if we retract the packaging, yeah, we're going to be skidding across the Well, what we can do, seems we're on our home planet, just take the science that we can. You'll see we haven't invented wheels yet. We haven't invented jet engines or plane capsules yet. We haven't invented proper wings. These are all the standard fins that I've just kind of strapped together into a vague wing-like shape. And with the Ferrum analysis that I've done, it should be pretty stable. The question is, can we get off the ground at all? So this is using a KW upper stage rocket engine. We haven't invented wheels yet, which is why I have those landing gears there. And these fins are really bad as control surfaces. They're barely responding at all. And this thing gets going at quite a pace, even though it's really not designed for this with these landing legs. So eventually, it goes pretty quickly, but it really just does not want to get off of the ground. And eventually, it gets really hard to control. I start skidding off of the side of the runway. We have to abandon ship. And yeah, we're running off. Well, back to the drawing board, I guess. Yeah, we broke that last piece of landing gear there. We'll just take the rest of the science, and we'll have to make some adjustments to the design. So here we have Bird version 2. Now, with the science that we got from our last jaunt around the runway, what was that? Well, with that, I was actually able to unlock things like engines and wheels and wings, which is fascinating developments all around, really. We have this little science bay there to be sleek and aerodynamic. And what I'm going to do is just get all of my science buttons right next to each other. So that way, when I run my experiments, I'll be able to quickly, just be able to quickly run them all at once and stow them. So a couple of things to note here. Apparently only one single air brake on this wing. So I'm going to just change that. The air brake seems to be stuck. That is a little concerning. That's not supposed to happen. Well, we're just gonna roll with it. So in here, we have our beautiful aircraft's cockpit. And we also have an external camera view that is upside down. I have neglected to account for that, so that's not very useful. And we have these wheels. These are bad wheels, but they are wheels nonetheless. And what I'm gonna do with this, honestly, it's pretty funny how just how loud all of these engines are. So basically, what I do here is, just fly around, or at least the plan was to fly around. It ends up not wanting to take off, and I have to use the lip of the runway there. And it flies okay. I'm not sure how much that stuck aero brake is doing. It certainly can't be helping my aerodynamics that much, but it doesn't seem to be pulling me to the left or anything like that. So we just fly out over the water and collect some data. And yeah, my ability to take a crew report disappeared. And I spent a long time searching for the button and I couldn't find it, which was unfortunate because that is a lot of science that I missed out. And I just was not able to take it. So, just flying over, we're going pretty fast. Those two jet engines are doing a lot. We're going around like Mach 0.8, like 280, 290 meters per second in this thing. So I decided, we've gone over the water, we've gone over the shores, we'll fly out over the grasslands. And there's a lot of biomes on Carbon. There's a lot right near the KSC, which is a great opportunity for science. If you ever are strapped for science like I was at this point. So there's, the shores, there's the water, there's the grasslands that you can fly over. There's also the highlands and the mountains that are right over here. And I'll just be passing over the highlands pretty shortly. I'm just taking measurements every now and then to watch when my biome is going to change. We just keep flying over, eventually bank left and go on over to the mountains over there for some more science. And, it's flying pretty all right. The SAS has this weird tendency to do a strange wobble. I honestly don't really like the design of this plane, but it's kind of just what I had with the technology. And I'm still working over the spaceplane hangar's 30 part limit because it is still the level 1. So at this point, I decide, we'll have Agadan try and fly this thing on a landing approach. And test out, some like the glide slope characteristics of this aircraft and stuff. We are pretty high and pretty fast, so you see I'm turning some S turns here to try and bleed off as much of that energy to slow down and come lower. And it does seem to want to nosedive a little bit, and as we keep flying and burning the fuel, the center of mass does shift a little bit more forward. And those wings are very far back, and that's what I've just looking at the indicators for center of mass, center of lift in the hangar. It looks to be pretty good, but I did not account for the fuel burning. Although we burn so little, I don't think it really matters that much. And I decided we're just coming in way too fast, so we're gonna have to turn around and go again. So we'll fly out for a little bit over the water again, and then turn around once we've come back to a suitable approach speed. And I've also got those 2 parachutes on the back there in case this thing ends up not being able to land, because these are the really bad. These wheels are terrible, and I've had it happen where I've come in on a really good approach and I've had these wheels and it's just it's randomly decided to spin out of control. So now going back to normal speed, I think some of these graphics mods and all of the aerodynamic stuff is really kind of pushing the abilities here. So you can see I'm not getting great frame rates. But just coming in low, 145 meters per second is a little bit fast. And this thing does really like to nosedive. So I've found myself multiple times just plummeting downwards much faster than I was wanting to. And yet, you see I try to flare there and then end up overcooking. And now I'm just way too high over the runway and going way too fast. So I decided, I don't really feel like turning around and going again. So I'm going to go up a little bit more and deploy the parachutes. So that way I have some more margin and room for them to work. And yeah, they do a pretty good job slowing me down. to about, 8 meters per second. That's about how fast we come down in our capsules on these parachutes. And yeah, the engines are so loud that I decided I'm just going to shut them down, enjoy some silence. Ferrum is very unhappy. It's saying we're having a large-scale stall, but, it's kind of the point of a parachute. And coming down, praying that nothing explodes, nothing does, and we, interestingly enough, bounce and roll forwards. But yeah, nice first flight. Well, that was an interesting first flight. We will have to make some improvements and, among other things, fix the air brakes, change the cameras, make this thing fly much more stably. But that was not a terrible first successful flight for our program. Now, after that flight, we were still a little bit strapped for science. So I'm here putting together this little sounding rocket here, inspired, of course, by real-life sounding rockets that were not nearly this large. The sounding rockets, basically, they just go up, straight up, above the atmosphere, collect some data all the way along the trip, and then basically just fall back down. And they made up a very large part of early space exploration before, we really had the capability to build big, complex rockets. So you see me, throwing together pretty simple, just a single big solid booster there to get us going nice and high. Simple probe core. This thing has no stability control at all with that, and it will have very limited battery life. So my plan is to just fly it up and collect science, pre-deploy everything, and let it just kind of fall and ride down. So we get it on the pad here, configure everything, no SAS, as you can see, and yeah, eventually you can just go for it. So, you can see the waterfall plume is acting a little bit strange there. I think it's because it's another booster from the KW pack. We get going really quickly, and we get some heating, but we have that fairing there, so it's all good. And you can see we're draining that power, and just as we get above, this is still near space, so there's not a lot of science we can get. And I pre-deploy the parachutes right on up to our apoapsis, and we'll go back to real-time me to see how the entry went. We are shooting down at 1 kilometer per second. And, yep, this thing is stable. So now it just has to survive the heating. Which I think it should be able to take without too much of a problem. Well, this antenna is kind of poking out there. I hope it survives. Getting pretty hot. Oh, okay, we lost the drogue. And we lost the mains. Okay. Well, so much for that. Maybe this thing can survive something? This seems to be slowing down a lot. Future versions will have to make it the parachutes deploy at lower pressures. Yeah, I don't think this is surviving. I'm gonna plow into the ground at 160 meters per second. That seems about right. We'll have to make some revisions to the design. And revise the design I did. So I went back into the vehicle assembly building, and the first thing I did was I changed those parachutes so that they would come out at a much lower or a much higher pressure. Because what had happened is they were at just the default, I think like 0.04 bar, 0.04 kilopascal, whatever the unit of pressure is. But at those pressures, we were going at like Mach 2 and still feeling some heating. And so the parachutes, as soon as they came out, they just immediately snapped off under the forces. So with this, I made them much higher pressure, so they'll come out much lower in the atmosphere when we're going at a much more reasonable speed. You can see me messing with the fairings here and trying to get them to work. For some reason, they refuse to close. I do like using these size-constricted fairings and not the procedural ones, because I think it's more of a challenge to try and, fit some stuff into them. It's a bit more, it's a fun challenge. So what I've done here is I've experimented with a few different ways, putting those ullage motors on there to see if I can, get a way to get more delta V onto this thing so that it can actually reach the altitude that I'm trying to reach and get to the precious high space science, which is the whole reason that I'm trying to do this. We've not sent anything up to high space. And I think this is a pretty cheap and easy way to do it. It's a lot cheaper than sending a whole orbital mission that we have to have a crew and all of that stuff, and it would just take a lot more time. And I felt a sounding rocket is pretty fun. So we go ahead and we launch that one now. Roll it out onto the pad. Instead, what I went with, instead of just some solid boosters, is I had the big solid booster from KW, and then also the liquid-fueled upper stage, which is a little more accurate to how some real sounding rockets like the Aero Bee would go. Now, of course, normally they're much smaller. They're only like 12 feet tall compared to this building-sized piece of equipment here. So I let it, of course, coast up so that we don't immediately, spin out of control. But of course, we do have some thrust vectoring and we have command over this thing, just no stability. So I have to kind of fight it and make sure that it, stays oriented. And then pre-deploy the parachutes. You can see we're draining the battery now, but we coast up all the way to about 200, I think 40 or 50 kilometers is when we get into high space. And once we're there, yeah, we can take all of that science and all the measurements. And I raise the pressures a little more. And then, yeah, now we just warp on down into our atmosphere interface. It has picked up some rotation, but it is passively stable enough. That heat shield is heavy enough. And we did come pretty close to almost losing the materials bay there because of that oscillation. And something is unbalanced here. I think might be the mystery goo or that parachute there. But yeah, we fall on down, we make it. Drogue comes out, coast on down through the clouds now. And yep, there go the parachutes. And it was just really scenic. I love the way that those the clouds cast shadows on the water there. Just really, makes it feel a whole lot more immersive, a whole lot more realistic. And yeah, we just parachute on down. It's lovely, lovely views from up here. And eventually we come back into the water for our splashdown and recovery. 200 meters, 4 meters per second. Yeah, this was really slow to just sit through in real time. But eventually we do make it and we do recover all the science. And from that we got a whole 84 science, which is just enough to bring us over into the barrier of 90 to unlock electrics. So now we have batteries and solar panels. With this, we'll be able to actually send longer duration crewed missions because capsules only come with 2 hours of life support for electricity, but 3 days of everything else. And so we'll be able to go much further than we have been. And we can finally fulfill this Explore the Moon flyby contract. But that will be in later episodes. Until next time.